Hello. Today, I'm very excited to not only have this presentation for you, but myself personally. Today, we're talking about build cohesive learning visuals with AI. So, if you've been thinking about it or tried it, or maybe you've been frustrated, you're in the right spot. And I have Christy Tucker with me today. She's our guest speaker. If you don't know Christy Tucker, you definitely should check out her site, Experiencing eLearning, ChristyTuckerLearning.com. And she's been in the industry for a long time, has a lot of experience in developing scenarios, and really focuses on creating engaging experiences. And of course, with AI, she's dipped her not only toes, I think her whole body into it to learn all about it there. And she's been having lots of different webinars some of you may have attended, or different posts that she's had about AI and visuals. So we're going to learn a lot today from Christy. And of course, today is brought to you by Domino. And if you haven't heard about us, we have been around for over 25 years. We are a leader in learning content authoring and management. We help folks to go ahead and not only create content, do just about anything you thought about with any other tool you can do in Domino, fully responsive or slide based. Manage all that content in a central repository, reuse things, single source design, publish different formats, and of course deliver dynamic publishing so you don't have to manually update content in your LMS every time there's an update. That's all provided in the Domino One solution out there. And of course, if that's something that sounds remotely interesting, definitely check us out. We'll send up some follow-ups for you. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Christy.
I'm going to see a little bit in chat first, partly
Yep.
because this is going to be interactive today. And so I do want you using the chat. I will warn you that because I do have some hands-on activities here, this session is going to be easier to use if you are on an actual computer screen and not a phone. If you're trying to watch this on your phone, note that the activities will probably be challenging. But in the chat right now, like, you've probably seen bad stock photos, right? Like, I know I've used some. So generally, what's wrong with stock photos? They're impersonal. Yeah. Too generic, lack of diversity, makes your training feel generic. Yeah. Not representative, unrealistic and cheesy, cutesy, obvious, inauthentic work environments, don't represent your audience, fake. Yeah, not exactly what you want, don't fit the context, unrealistic. I love cringe. Fantastic. Yeah, kind of bland. No PPE. Getting the right PPE in stock images is so hard. Yeah. You see the same person on a billboard sometimes, Paul. I have, like, there's one guy and I'm like, and I recognize his shirt. Even then I'm like, I know it's from the same set of photos I've used in training, right? Perfect teeth. Love it, right? We know that there's a bunch of problems with these. So if you're trying to have that image of a team in your training, do you want the one with everybody in a suit with their thumbs up and a cheesy grin? Or do you want something like this? So do you think this is an image that you could use in a course? And I will say, I don't think that this is perfect. I think the water glasses in this images, like, something weird is happening here. Midjourney did something weird. There used to be a giant plant in the back corner, and I edited out the plant and had it regenerate without giant random plant. Midjourney loves adding plants to offices in weird places. But this is probably, like, and I might do some more editing if I was really using this. But for something that would be on screen for a couple of seconds, this would probably work. So can we bring up that first poll
Yes.
about what your biggest frustration with training visuals is right now? And some of this, I think you've already sort of answered in the chat. But what's the biggest problem? So far, looks like the can't find images that truly represent my learners or scenarios is the most popular one. Although patchwork of different styles is also a big one. I was gonna say, when you have a unique industry, a unique context, it's hard to find branded images. Yeah, there's some all of the above. Yes. But so the thing that I'm hearing here is that the big thing is, how do you represent your learners, the ones that are in your industry, your setting, your people with the right amount of diversity for the scenarios and situations that reflect the realistic work context. So my goals with AI images and the goals of what I want you to learn today is how to generate images that are high quality and unique and tailored to your audience. I am not necessarily going to promise you that this is going to be cheaper and faster. So maybe it'll be cheaper and faster. I do find that I am spending less money with AI image generation than what I was spending on stock images previously. Sometimes it is faster. Sometimes when I do the process of regenerating, it is not always faster. And I think that it is the obvious, there's a comment here about the obvious lazy AI generated pictures. This is not just you write a vague prompt, you take the first result and you don't think about it anymore. That's not what we're talking about here today. So why should you care what I have to say? If you're not familiar with me and my work, I am always reluctant to call myself an AI expert. I am a practitioner and an instructional designer, learning experience designer who is out there figuring out how to use AI for real in projects. I do a lot of scenario-based learning. And so I've been looking for character images for those scenarios and for ways to do that better than the cutout character images that we all used previously. I also write a weekly blog post and I need a blog post header, which is one of the places that I've been practicing. Over the last couple of years, I have generated at least 1,500 images. And so I think there is a lot of content that I have done and I've gotten lots of practice. So because I've gotten lots of practice, I want you to get a little bit of practice today. And I want you to get a little bit of a shortcut with some of the things that I have tried and failed. So I have used a bunch of different tools for image generation. I tend to start in Midjourney. I've been using Flora increasingly, which is a little higher learning curve, but I'm liking that a lot. I use Gemini, which is also known as Nano Banana. I've used all of these other tools. Some of these are sort of specialized. But we're going to practice a bit today. And if you don't have access, okay, so the first line on here of if you have some image generation tool that is approved in your organization, use the one that's already approved by your IT department. Please don't get into trouble with your IT security team on my account. But if you want to test something else out today, there are several freebie tools that are potentially available. And I'm going to put some links. So many of these tools have at least some free credits. I have a handout that has links to all of these tools. That'll redirect. There will be one big orange button. And the first thing that I want you to do is pick one of these tools in the handout. There's a link to a bunch of tools in here. I would pick, for today's purposes, I would do Gemini, which is also known as Nano Banana, or the Flux Playground. Try the second link, but you may do better with christytuckerlearning.com/domino. So that'll give you the handout. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Get in, pick one of these tools. Flora, I have on the list here, and you can get some cool things with Flora. I will say that if you are just getting started with images, pick something that's not Flora. If you've been using images for a while and want to try something different, Flora might be. I think the HTTPS of the link is what's throwing things off. So try the second link instead, and that will give you this handout. I have a bunch of different tools here with some notes about what they're good at, but these free tools for practice, you can pick one of these. Or if you've got Copilot, that's fine. Again, like I said, use the tool that you are authorized to use. Yeah, as I said, Leonardo is one of the ones that has access to a couple of models. All right. And again, if Copilot or ChatGPT or whatever is used in your organization, if that's what you've got, just make sure that you've got that up. And Gemini, I will say Gemini, which is also known as Nana Banana, I will use the names interchangeably today. Gemini is a great model. So if that's what you've got for work, that's a great one to choose. All right. I'm hoping that everybody's got a tool set at this point. So let's talk about prompting. So this is the basic prompt that I use for prompting for images, regardless of which tool, with a very few exceptions. So the image style is about what tells it, is it photorealistic or illustrated, or what kind of illustration, what kind of photo? Subject, pretty obvious. If it's a character or a person, like what's that person doing? What's the action? Any physical characteristics about the person, or if it's an object, what is those physical characteristics? Clothes, setting, additional details. The order of this is not 100% set. This is a framework, but it's not real prescriptive. So you can switch around the order of these, especially the ones in the middle. I do find that putting the image style at the beginning does help frame it. And I think having the subject as a key thing at the beginning is important. Most image generation models weigh the things that are at the beginning of your prompt more heavily than the things at the end of your prompt. So if you're having trouble with something, sometimes moving something or adding additional details to the beginning of your prompt can get you better results. So here's what this looks like in practice. An editorial photo of an Asian woman working on a laptop in a sunny home office with a focused expression and a blue coffee mug on the desk. And you can see all of those details are in this image. So here's that breakdown. Editorial photo is the style. The subject is that Asian woman. It's that person. What is she doing? She's working on a laptop. The setting is a sunny home office. The word sunny here is also helping not just with the setting, but also with the lighting. And if you really want to go get into more detail, there's a lot of language around lighting that you can refine your images more. A focused expression, that's a characteristic about that character. And an additional detail of a blue coffee mug. If you tell it image style, what's your in the image style subject? Are you calling out which section is? In multimodal tools, which would be ChatGPT, Nana Banana, and Gemini, you can actually kind of list these out in bullet points. I have this listed here with, you can see it's just phrases with commas, because this one was in Midjourney. But you can actually, in some of the other tools, you can basically make a colon list for yourself and say, image style, colon, editorial photo, subject, colon, Asian woman, action, comma, right? Asian is quite broad. I absolutely agree. I've done as specific as like Filipino or Malaysian before and have gotten pretty good results. So I would absolutely say this one is very broad. And one of the reasons I do like the AI images is because I can get much narrower. Whereas if I'm searching stock photos, I'm going to generally search for Asian and like hope that I can find somebody who looks Filipino or Malaysian. But yep. So if you haven't already been trying this out, take a minute in whatever image tool you're testing out today or using because that's what your work has. Write something like that prompt and try using editorial photo as your image style. I'm going to give one more minute, but if you've already tried it, how are your results? I saw one person said that they were using Adobe Express and it was working well there. That's not a tool I've tried out, but I'm glad this prompt does generally work across tools. So I'm happy to hear that. Right. So looking at the responses here, edited the prompt to say South Asian, got a good representation, but the home is very Western. And I think, so my guess is I would probably change the setting to, I would say, you may need to have some more descriptions of it. One of the first questions I'd gotten from somebody about AI images was from someone in rural Rwanda who said he really struggles to find anything in stock image sites that represent what his world looks like. And I said, oh, okay, well, let me try. And like, I don't know enough about rural Rwanda to tell if it was accurate or not. So I did a couple of images for him and said, like, is this the right direction? And so he was very happy with it. Was at least close enough to give him a way to go do it. So I think that you can say, so the setting would be something of like, I did a home office. I'm seeing a couple of results here. You might have to say, I think for that like South Asian, you might have to give it some more details on the setting of in a South Asian or in a Filipino home and see. Sometimes it's still going to fail because all of these were, trained on stock images, and stock images do tend to lean Western. So there is sort of a style. But yeah, I love seeing it, right? You've got a bunch of these. Yeah, and so you can change it to, a student in the library. You can change it to something else. But overall, I think you're getting a good starting point, right? Yeah, change the race, change the action. You can do any of that. Yeah. All right. Great starting point. So now, let's dig into it some more. We can have one of the problems that people often have in images is that it's too generic to start. It is a person using a computer. And if you say a person without specifying anything further, most of the time you're probably going to get a white man. So this is the difference between saying a person using a computer and an editorial photo of a black man in his mid-30s typing on a keyboard, 2 monitors, a mood board on 1 monitor, wearing a red polo shirt. So you can see the difference in this. And not that the one on the left is bad, but if you're looking for something that matches your audience, you're going to have to give it more details. I will also say, if you look at general image prompting tips online, a lot of that's designed for marketing or other purposes. And so you'll see cinematic photo or hyper realistic. I found that editorial photo looks more like a realistic photo of a person doing an action than things that say cinematic photo, which tends to be too dramatic and cheesy, or to do something like the hyper realistic, which I find sometimes is too exaggerated. I do use some other ones. I do use cinematic sometimes if I am actually looking for something more dramatic. I have also used studio photo or studio portrait photo when I'm trying to generate character references and I want studio lighting. I think that I think more specificity is great. And don't feel bad about like trying something else that's on your own. I think, and I will say Adobe Firefly is a great tool, and I love the style of that you got with that kind of crayon illustration. Paul got one with, like talking and with it having domino on the slides behind, right? Another thing with image prompting is to use positive language. Describe what you want, not what you don't want. Almost all of these tools will do better if you say clean desk instead of saying no clutter. So there are some tools that will have a feature for negative prompts, and so you can pay attention to the specifics of that. I will say that ChatGPT, Copilot, and Nana Banana all do better with having some negative language. But if you're having trouble, switch, see if you can rephrase it in a positive way. Diversity was one of the things that was mentioned as one of the key problems in stock photos and in your training visuals overall. If you don't specifically prompt for inclusive images, you will not generate them. Stock images were trained on, or the AI images were trained on stock images, which we know don't do a great job of representing diversity. And because AI images also tend to, because they are predictive and because they tend to go towards what it thinks is most likely, it can actually amplify the stereotypes and be even worse than stock photos if you are asking for things. And it's again that specificity as well. And sometimes you're not even going to get it even when even when you prompt for it, sometimes it will take a couple of tries. So characteristics that you might note in that specificity in your prompt would be about gender, race, ethnicity, age, hairstyles. Some of the tools do better with natural hairstyles for Black women in particular. That's one of my tests for breaking points for images. And some of them do great and some of them not amazing. Body type, AI images like stock images tend to be all of skinny people, skinny models. So I think there's some of that. Okay. I will say that you can, so we will talk about character consistency. There are some tools to do. We're going to talk a little bit about character consistency. And so yes, you can have the same person with multiple poses a couple of different ways. Text, some tools are better than others. Sometimes Midjourney I love for images overall, but it's terrible with text. Sometimes the cutting the head off the character, sometimes you can get around that if you talk about their hair or you talk about their head. Just like if you're trying to get a full body image, if you mention something about their hair and you mention something about their shoes, even though you can say full body image and it'll just ignore it in the prompt sometimes, but if you talk about both the hair and the shoes, then it has to show you the full body to meet the prompt. So that might be one trick. Yeah, I would say I'm with you, Paul, on asking for no text and just put it in yourself. Yeah. All right. So image styles. This was an example that I did. I did the same prompt and all I did was change the image style at the beginning of the prompt. And you can see how different my results were. One of my challenges, for a long time in e-learning, only almost exclusively used photorealistic images because trying to find a consistent set of illustrated images for a whole course was such an exercise in frustration. I would spend so many hours looking in stock image libraries without getting it that I largely gave up. So we can do things, and there's a lot of different image styles. ChatGPT has improved its styles. It's still a little bit more limited. It's got some basic things, but it's definitely improving. Banana and Copilot uses mostly ChatGPT's image generation. It's tuned a little different, but anything I say about ChatGPT applies to Copilot as well. So a couple of illustration styles. This is used the style digital illustration, which I find is a pretty good basic style. I get realistic proportions. It's clearly a digital image. Sometimes I've prompted for vector image. Now, whether a tool actually gives you a vector image or not is separate from the style. I will sometimes use this as a prompt. This was one where it looks like it could be a vector image, but it is not actually a vector image. But there are a couple of tools that can do it, but know that it's not going to be always the same. And vector illustration can actually really vary quite a bit. This was one where I used an image as the prompt for the style. And so vector illustration is all I had in the prompt, but you can see how different the style is here, right? It's all different colors. It's got this very stylized shapes, this sort of retro futuristic style. So another phrase that I use in my prompts is modern corporate style. So if you do illustration, maybe digital illustration or vector illustration paired with modern corporate style, that tends to get you the kinds of realistic images that I find work well for training. The same prompt framework works for all of these illustrated images. And you can see that this is that same kind of prompt framework. Now, in this one, I was having a little bit more trouble getting the style right. So I have a couple more prompts, phrases to get the style. Whiteboard line drawing, hand-drawn, marker, black and white. But this was from somebody who said they were struggling to get a Maori man who did not have facial tattoos, but did have longer hair, and that he was working at a computer. And so I think that, so this was one where I was playing around to get something. They wanted something hand drawn and they wanted something that was Maori. We talked about the getting your specific audience right. And this was, they wanted that Maori audience representation, but there's almost nothing in stock images that would do this. So this was how I did very specific. And you can see in the prompt, and it did take me a couple iterations to get that style right. So a colored pencil sketch. In this case, we have this is the same sort of structure, that same framework. And I did a colored pencil sketch. And in fact, Midjourney even tried to fake in a signature, an autograph from the illustrator. But you can do this and have it look hand-drawn. So another has to try it out. Using maybe your same prompt from earlier or using a different prompt. Use that same framework, but pick one of these styles. Do digital illustration or modern corporate illustration or whiteboard marker line drawing and see what you get. And while you're doing that, tools that will create actual vector files, Recraft and Brushless will create actual vector files. I know in Brushless, having used it recently, you can choose to export as a PNG or a transparent PNG or an SVG or a transparent SVG. So you can get actual transparent backgrounds and not gray and white checkerboards that pretend to be transparent without actually being transparent. A thing I know Paul has run into and some of the rest of you have perhaps also run into. So abstract images, I'm going to talk about icons and symbolic images too. The fake transparent is a real problem. It's not you, and I don't have an answer on prompting. I wish I had an easy button like prompt tip to make these tools do actually transparent. Your best option is probably, if you're not using something like Recraft or Brushless that can actually generate vectors, your best option is to do something with probably a solid white background, to maybe give it a hex code and then remove the background later, which I know it's an extra step, but that seems to be. Yeah, we're going to see icons with the same look and feel. I've got a couple of different things. Yeah, background solid color, all white, and then remove it in another tool. We'll talk about that. Yeah, I love that illustration of a woman working. Yeah, I think we're getting some cool illustrations here. I love seeing the responses in the chat. I liked the line drawing one too, Paul. That was cool. Ooh, I like this. Yeah, and you can get that sort of like, I'm gonna guess that last one with the green shirt's probably ink and watercolor. That's one of my favorite styles to do because it doesn't look quite so digital. Yeah. All right. So I can see that a lot of you are getting this. So let's talk about consistency because we were talking specifically about getting those cohesive images here. So this is a set of images I generated in Midjourney, and this actually is at least a year old. In Midjourney, I can generate one image, put it in, and then use it as a style reference and just generate a bunch of others. So you can see in this one how much you picked up on the colors from the first one and just used all of these others. And yeah, you can see I'm watching all of the other ones come in too. Right? So I will say how you get style consistency does vary more depending on your tool. For those of you who are using Copilot, ChatGPT, and Nano Banana, it is probably going to be your prompt, but you can also do reference images. So when we were talking about vector images, Recraft is one of the tools that can do vector images. And this also has a bunch of built-in styles. So you can see that there are styles in here that you can do. And so you can basically pick a style and it'll match that style for multiple images. The other one that I mentioned that does true vectors is Brushless. This is a very small selection of their styles here, but you can see that there's like the flat icons or the scribble icons. Brushless, you can upload your color scheme to it. And then you can generate icons or vector images and then have it match the colors. Now, I'm going to guess that all of you have either branding colors from your marketing that you're required to use, or you get to pick a color scheme for your course, and then you want to use it consistently, right? And this is one of those challenges with AI images. So, did you know that ChatGPT, Nano Banana, and Copilot, you can literally put your hex codes in the prompts? This was, I think, actually ChatGPT. The last update for ChatGPT made a big difference. So this was a digital illustration. You can see that it's, desk in a modern office. I gave some details, and then I had those colors. So this has been such a time saver. You can also take existing images, upload if you have an image of your color scheme, and say, change the color grading of this image to match the attached color scheme. This one was ChatGPT, but I tested it in Nano Banana last night. It should work in Copilot as well. For those of you who are Copilot, if it may be that you could try generating it, try uploading 2 images, uploading a source image and an image of the colors, maybe instead of the hex codes. It may also be that because Copilot ChatGPT just got the ability to do hex codes, I think in its last update. Copilot may be a little bit behind, or adding your brand colors. So, again, this is a little tricky because how you do it is going to be a little different. Okay, I see those of you who use Copilot, thank you for jumping in and talking about that you can upload your brand kit. So, that's the way to do it in Copilot. Listen to them. But hex codes is such a time saver. So, reference images and styles in ChatGPT, Copilot, and Nano Banana, you're going to upload reference images. Midjourney has a couple of different ways to do styles and colors. Recraft and Brushless, you select a style, you upload your colors, and then you get it. Also, some node-based tools. I will show you those and how you connect those, but you're essentially using a reference image. So in ChatGPT, you could upload a reference image if you've got something, or you can just use one of the images you already generated and see if you can generate another illustration in the same colors and the same style. You may have to do prompting of, like if you did ink and watercolor previously, include in this ink and watercolor style. I love all of you helping each other out with the Copilot tips. All right, in the interest of time, because I know you want to hear about consistent characters, I know you may still be playing with getting some consistent illustrations, but I want to make sure I share these tips with you. So consistent character images. This particular set was generated in Midjourney, but you start with a reference image, and then you can see that I changed her clothes, her hair, her setting, and you can get a bunch of these images to use in scenarios. This was one of the big things that I was looking for in AI images when I started, and it's just getting better all the time. Right now, I think that Nano Banana is the best tool for character edits, but ChatGPT, and including Copilot, and Flux and Flora are also all good options. I'm hearing from somebody, Leonardo, because you've got access to Nano Banana through Leonardo, and so that makes sense that would be another one for like changing the expressions and the postures. So the process is you start with a reference image, try to change 1 or 2 elements at a time generally. You may have to note what to keep in addition to what to change. Something like keep the facial structure and the clothes exactly the same. You can prompt to place them in scenes. If you find that things are drifting, especially in these chat-based tools, after 3 or 4 iterations, you may start that things are starting to get further and further from the reference. You can either upload your reference image again or start a new chat. So here's an example. I started with the reference image on the left and then prompted, change her expression to be confused with her head tilted slightly. Move her hands down to her side. So I had 2 changes, but it kept the setting and it changed the expression. Now, I've been using a tool called Flora. I will say that the learning curve's a little higher on this, but if you're doing a lot of image generation, you're doing scenarios and things, I'm finding that this is often easier for me to work with, and I can see all of the changes that I'm doing with all of the different poses. And I can have all these prompts of, change the character's expression to confused, change the character's expression to frustrated, change the character's expression to listening with their arms crossed. You can copy those and upload a new reference image and then use all those same prompts again. So you can get a little bit of scaling. This is where it does start to potentially be a little faster. There's also some skin texture enhancement tools. If you've seen that sort of overly airbrushed, waxy look, like on the left, this was one where I just ran it through the skin enhancer. So now she looks like she's in her 50s, which that character is supposed to be. This was one. Yeah. And so you include the generated image as an image reference. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And so then, she doesn't look like an airbrush stock photo. This is one where I uploaded 2 reference images. I created these reference images and then I combined them. You can see by the lower right-hand corner, this was a Gemini image. So I put these 2 into a scene together and it changed the pose. This is one that Paul and I had been looking at this. This is one of the domino samples at the top here. We said, well, we could redo this one. And so let me switch over. So you can see, so this was the original version of this course, which look, I've built things like this. Maybe you have too. And here he's talking, right? And we've got that goes, but the backgrounds don't look amazing. And also, does everybody wear a suit in your workplace? And then I gave him a couple of reference images, and then Paul took some of these tips and worked in it afterwards. This scene, to me, feels a lot more realistic than what the original one was. And here, where he's talking and his pose looks a little bit more realistic. So this is true where we've got, and we can have the 2 different characters in that room talking. And we can have those different poses. Right? So Paul was able to do this is Paul. This part is not me. This is Paul doing the work of taking these tips and applying them to improve an old course. And so you can see that this is improved and it feels more like the real setting. So, all right. Back to the slides. All right. So the process in this was I created initial characters in Midjourney. I brought these into Flora and I used a tool called Flux to generate full body images of them. I did a scene, a background. I used Nana Banana to composite the first scene. And then I handed these images off to Paul, and Paul was able to then use Nana Banana and make some other character images. Now, he ran into some credit limits and some other problems, but you can see how much better that result is, right? And so maybe you need to do image editing tools to remove the backgrounds or to crop things to the specific dimensions. But you can see how much improved that was from the work that Paul did. Icons and symbolic images. So one thing is that you can do the icons. If you prompt whatever LLM you use, you can get ideas on how to visually represent the concepts. Because we often are dealing with abstract concepts that we need to figure out how to represent in a concrete way. So I love this for that sort of icons and visual metaphors. In Nana Banana, ChatGPT, Copilot, and Recraft, you can actually generate a whole set of icons all at once. In other tools like Brushless, Midjourney, I think in Leonardo, you will have to you generate one and then you use it as a style reference for the other images. So you generate one image, describe the style, and then generate more with that same style. So this set, these 9 icons, was all generated in a single prompt in Nano Banana, and that prompt is in your handout. So I started with modern line icon set. That's the style. Clean rounded lines, dark blue with orange accents on a white background. Also more description of that style. And I could put hex codes in here for the colors. And then I did 3x3 grid. And then I listed each one of these: laptop, document, thought bubble, flowchart, download, light bulb, mobile phone, right arrow, check mark. So this gave me 9 of them all together. Now, I probably would just take this into another image editing tool then and split them up. And I would split them up and make them transparent elsewhere. Nano Banana, all of these tools are not great about transparent. If you do something in Recraft or Brushless, though, you can get it transparent right off the bat. So there are styles and textures for icons that you can use. I like modern line icon and flat icon. Those are probably the two that I use the most often. But you can do isometric icons. I've done 3D renders. I've done some hand-sketched marker drawing or colored pencil or scribble drawings for some of my clients and some projects. Paper cutout can be an interesting one. I even actually starting with one that was a flat vector icon, and then retextured it with a bunch of different things. So you could, depending on your style and how much flexibility you have, you can do some really cool things and then I could, get a set of these that all matched for a course. I think given the time, we're not going to try this out, but you can try it on your own to test making an icon. So we have another poll. What is the biggest hurdle stopping you and your team from fully utilizing AI images? All right, I'm seeing a lot of tool access and budget. You use the free version. Yeah. And prompting skills, I will say that, so the prompting, and it does take some practice, but I do think you should be able to take that framework that you've gotten today for the skills and keep working on it. I will say if your company requires branded images, I think that you should be able to take some of what you learned here today and say, okay, I can get branded images in AI. So the copyright questions, you can assume that anything you generate with AI cannot be copyrighted itself unless you are doing significant editing on it. I'm not a lawyer, but that's probably a general good rule of thumb. But that's fine. You can still use it in your copyrighted images. However, note that some of the AI image tools, you should be looking for ones and making sure that you are on a plan that allows those images for commercial use. That's the safest way to reduce risk. So, yeah, ethical dilemma. I will say that Adobe, there was a question about training data. Adobe Firefly is trained only on images that are paid and licensed by Adobe. And so if you want to go a step up in the ethics, I would go for Adobe Firefly. Running out of credits on the images is for sure a problem. And I see that that's coming up too. Enterprise access and higher access. Some of this may be in the tools, if you can get enough so that you can hopefully use that to help justify getting other tools. So, what other questions do you have? What are you wondering about? Any gotchas that I've run into?
And there was also earlier questions more about copyright. I think you've touched on that, but anything
Okay.
else you can add to it? There were several questions, just general things about using, was it trained on there and all those kind of things, which you mentioned.
Yeah. I think, and I know that there were also some questions about citing AI images. I know that Europe in particular is increasingly looking for citations or to disclose that you have used AI in your image generation. So I would say that you need to figure that out as an organization, how you're going to handle it. But I think that it's not a bad choice to disclose that you're doing AI images. I think there was questions about voice. I think that that's beyond the scope of today, but I would say 11 Labs is probably is the one that I generally go to for voice. If you work with a team and you're looking at consistency across the trainings, I would say you probably need to look at how you're prompting for the styles. And so if you're doing an illustration style, if you can figure out what that illustration style is and then use that reference and figure out how to consistently do that, you may also, if you're working in a team, need to upgrade to a tool like Recraft or Flora or FreePic Spaces, all of which have team features so that you can be consistent across teams too. Flora, for example, you can share credits across teams and you can share projects across teams. So you can start with a reference and then work it out that way. Trying to look through.
There was a question on what are some recommended best free tools.
I think Gemini is the best free tool available right now. I think Flux is probably my next one that I would go to. The links to the free tools that are in the handout, all of those have at least something that you can get for free. Midjourney is one of the few that has no free plan to test it out. But you can do a bit of free. You will hit limits, and you do have to be careful on commercial use for free plans. Sometimes the free plans also, anything you generate is public. And so pay attention to that as well. And the last thing, we've got 2 minutes left. So what is your next step? Now that the session is done, what's your next step with AI images? And if you also want to put in chat something of, like, what did you learn today that you will be able to go and use after you answer that poll? Practicing. Yeah. Go practice. I think that's great. This is a skill, and you'll get better at it with practice. And know that even though I have lots of experience, I fail sometimes. Like, I get disasters sometimes. So know that, like, sometimes it is going to go wrong. And sometimes that is your prompt. And also sometimes it is just the weirdness of AI. And it sometimes will ignore your prompt directions and you will get weird stuff. And it's okay because you're going to iterate and you're going to improve. So most of you are going to go start experimenting with prompts and using this framework. And then some of you who have already been doing some images, you're going to be working on that, improving and iterating the prompts that you already have. Yeah. We'll put my contact info up here. If we're not connected on LinkedIn, feel free to send me an invite. And, but that has my blog and everything else. I have lots of tips about AI on my blog, but all right. Generating icons is the best thing. I see lots of, and it's been great to see all the images and things.
And thank you again, Christy. This was a fantastic presentation. I know I've learned a lot from you over the years, and especially this last week, and it sounds like everyone else has too. And of course, if you're looking for a great authoring solution to help you out, people talk about citations. That's actually a built-in feature of Domino One. You don't have to manually create it, manually set the settings and everything. You can even reuse it. Check out Domino One. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate your time. And thank you again, Christy. This was awesome.
Thanks, everybody, for being active and trying it out.